So there's a ritual in my house which goes like this. My granddaughter from Somerville, Massachusetts, calls up with her father every 3 or 4 days. She's 3.5, and it's a FaceTime call. And it goes like this. Hi, Booby. Where's Papa? And then I tell her, or I get Warren and say, here. And then she says, where's the kitty? And I grab the kitty, and the kitty starts purring. And then she says, where's Sybil? Which is how she says our dog's name, which is Sybil. And then, for a while there, I was singing O Susanna, following this triduum of introductions. And this morning, she said to me, no singing on the FaceTime. And I said to Jacob, my son, I said, well, Jacob, what's wrong with singing on the FaceTime? And she said, because you only sing in circles. She started to go to a school where they have a circle of song, and that is the right way to do it. So I'm done with O Susanna. But of course, at the end of the call, I couldn't help myself and broke out into a heart-rending version of the whole song. Because I can't have any more fundamentalists in my family than I already have, being one myself. So watch out. So today, the problem I'm going to present you with has a big word, it's called supersessionism, and you heard it expressed very well in the Hebrews passage. The Jewish faith was pretty good until Jesus came along, and then the Christian faith was the right faith. And that is a version of fundamentalism. And since there are so many versions of fundamentalism, which I'm going to define simply as being right about the fundamentals, and not being able to deal with evidence, or literalism. So, being right in a literal way. And the problem with fundamentalism is everywhere in today's society. It's everywhere. And I don't really want to spend time on terrorism or evangelicals or women not being able to get an abortion or the gazillion other things I could spend time on because we've been there and we've done that. I want to talk to you about what's wrong with fundamentalism from our perspective. I think problems that are way beyond us get too much attention, and the problems close by don't get enough attention. So where does fundamentalism impact progressive people who are also religious? Where does it come into our world? And I think it comes in many, many ways that are kind of sneaky and relatively small. And that means that the good news is we can do something about it. It is good news that we can do something about our own fundamentalism. Again, with us, with progressive religious people of many stripes, we are defined as being the people who are unsure about fundamentals, right? And who really don't like literalism at all. And so we're inclined to have 15 different perspectives on any given subject. And we enjoy that. And we think that is fundamental to have all those differences and to be tolerant of all those differences. And the only problem is that relativism, in the best sense of the word relativism, everything is relative to everything else. So what is big or right? What's the biggest, the best? See, I might think that Jesus is the best God, but I don't think, or version of God, but I don't think other people have to think that. So I sound wishy-washy about the thing that I feel most important about, because that very tolerance gets in my way. And this that relativism and uncertainty about foundations and not knowing who's got the best God, because I really don't know who's got the best God. If I did, I might kill somebody for it, you know what I mean? That's a terrible thing to say. But since I don't know, I don't have to go to those extremes. So let me describe this giant hole that lives in the middle of our progressive response to fundamentalism. We become fundamentalist often in a kind of Marxist or materialist reductionism, right? What's the biggest thing? What's the challenge to God? The market, late-stage capitalism, the money people, the bad people. We have this sense that there is something more important than anything else and that we're not in control of it, and it's not wholly that, in fact, it's bad. There's a badness at the heart, as opposed to a powerful goodness. There's a powerful badness. So my friend Susanna Lessard, who usually, when we play tennis, we play singles, and it's always 6-6. And her nickname is Suki, and she spent 20 years writing a book about landscapes. And I went to hear her go through enormous American landscapes this week: Gettysburg, Central Park, places where our heart is in love. And she made several strong points. She said, when I began the book on landscapes, I knew landscapes were threatened. I knew that people didn't like to travel anymore. And I thought, people don't like to travel anymore? I think I still like to travel, sort of. And she said, no, people don't like to travel because every place is the same as every other place. And she coined a word, which is atopia, that there is no place, that what we really want is to be on our screens, because that's where our work is, and that's where our life is, and that's where our connection is. That work has so changed, and we know that, how much it's changed, that we are placeless people, or people who wouldn't know how to appreciate a landscape because we don't need it. So she inserted what she calls the hand of work into the place of economic or materialist reductionism. She said, when work changes, our experience of place also changes, and that it's terribly important to understand that. But when all places, and then she said, okay, I'll return, if you want, to a kind of anti-capitalist point of view, that of course markets create this placelessness or atopia or sameness all over the place. Of course markets do that, but she said what really does that is there not being anything larger than markets. Not being anything larger than markets. So when you have a weak God, that whole gets larger. That was her argument. I was thinking the same thing about Hudson Yards. You know, it's driving me crazy because I have such a problem with bigness and money and art because I think it gets in the way. And the other hand, I really don't want everybody to be as starving artists or to not have what they need. And then I went on the Hudson Yards website to find out what kind of jobs, the hand of work, they had. It's amazing. They're hiring 32 people, and one is a customer experience satisfaction expert. We need one around here. Another is a rigger, because the building moves and you have to re-rig it all the time. And there's a chief rigger and an assistant rigger. And I was thinking about the fight that I saw online, not just about Hudson Yards and the relationship of art and money, because I want art to have money, I just don't want it to drown in money, or the hand of work to become fed so much by money that it can't do anything beautiful. And then I saw this picture of the last house standing in Paradise, California, and read the various points of view online about it. Some people love it because it made art out of the ruins. And other people hate it because it's one face. And they think that it made individualism or the suffering of the individual larger than the suffering of the whole. And being a fundamentalist who likes to be right in all of her opinions, I don't know what I think about it. And isn't that good? And how does that guide either Hudson Yards or Judson Yards or Jaws if you don't know? If you just don't know. If you like it or you don't like it. Or if you should listen to a child tell you you're not supposed to sing on the cell phone. So in a world where everything is kind of cattywampus, I think what we can do is this. We can try to be stronger in our viewpoints about what's really important. Not certain, but to reach for a fundamental that is beautiful enough, connected to the hands of our work enough, full enough to combat things that are finally ugly or too expensive. So I went to a seminar on ministry in January. Every year, the 50 or so, quote, senior ministers in the United Church of Christ gather for a conversation in a nice, warm place. And it's fascinating. I used to call it the drink-a-thon. But most of us just can't hold our liquor anymore, and so we've started doing less of that and more of other things. And the speaker was a man named Peter Marty, who is the editor of Christian Century and a Lutheran pastor, a very, very fine person. And he gave us some ways to be small and sure about how good it was that we were small. And this crowd is not without ego, okay? So get ready for that. So he said, I'm just going to give you a few of his sound bites because I think they help. He said, ministry is a high calling. Aim lower. Your own spiritual life is what matters the most. First, your family, then your friends, then your prayer life, and then your congregation. And of course, they will always act like they need to matter the most to you if you have a high calling. But he said something that was really, really good. He said, the opposite of ministry is not majesty. And did you see the word majesty in the Hebrew text? They were even taking Jesus, who came as a humble man, and turning him into a majesty, the right hand of God, higher and higher and higher. But what was great about Jesus is that he aimed low. He aimed low. Because who else is going to convince anybody, as Peter said, that the powerless have worth, that the poor are significant, that the oppressed matter? Who else is going to be able to do that except somebody who is not majestic? And Peter said, you know what the opposite of majesty is? He said it's ministry. Ministry is minus majesty. Minus majesty. Your win as a minister is not being right or powerful, but instead loving people and thinking that they know you love them. You decrease as they increase. You can't master ministry. Don't get a doctor in ministry. Get a minor in it if you must do something to keep your head going. Often under the hand of work called capitalism, we think the powerless must be powerless because they are wrong about something. We love to blame the poor for their poverty, and it's not their fault. So Marty finished by saying, to become a better pastor, become a better person. And you are all ministers as well. Let your expertise be in whole living, in wholeness, not in your doctorates or your salaries or your resumes, because that will follow the one we call God as best as we can. So what's going to happen next is just a communion service. What's going to happen on Maundy, Thursday is not a Christian Seder. We don't call it that, but let's make sure we don't call it that, because that is culturally appropriating. Let's have a communion service in the name of the God to whom we couldn't give any more, but also about whom we're a little unsure. O Susanna. Amen.